Olivia grabbed my hand, her smile promising to bring our marriage back to life. "This will be for us, David," she said, but a shadow flashed in her eyes. At the resort, her laughter mingled with the voices of friends I hadn't expected. Their stares cut, and Olivia's words revealed the truth. I was only part of her game. I stood among strangers, feeling everything I believed in crumble. What was she hiding? And was I ready to find out? David sat at his desk, the faint hum of the city outside his window barely registering. His marriage to Olivia was a polished facade, admired by others, envied even, but hollow at its core. He was the steady one, the businessman who valued loyalty and trust, pouring his energy into building a life for their family. Olivia, vibrant and magnetic, thrived in the glitter of high society, her laughter commanding rooms he rarely entered. Their children, Lily and Ethan, were the glue that held them together, but even they couldn't fill the growing distance between him and his wife. When Olivia suggested a vacation, it caught him off guard. "Just the two of us, David," she said, her voice warm, her eyes sparkling with something he hadn't seen in years. "We need this. A chance to reconnect, to remember who we are." Her words stirred hope in him, a flicker of the love they'd once shared. He wanted to believe her, to trust that this trip could mend the cracks in their marriage. "Okay," he said, nodding. "Let's do it." She took charge of the planning, as she always did. "I'll handle everything," she said, waving off his offer to help. David didn't argue. He was used to her taking the lead, her confidence a force he'd long stopped questioning. Besides, his days were consumed with work, meetings, contracts, deadlines. Letting Olivia plan the trip felt like a relief, one less burden on his shoulders. He told himself it was her way of showing she cared, of fighting for them. But there were signs he ignored. The way she checked her phone when she thought he wasn't looking, her fingers moving quickly over the screen. The sharp edge in her voice when she spoke to someone on the phone, too low for him to hear. The way her smiles felt rehearsed, like she was performing for an audience he couldn't see. David pushed these thoughts aside. Doubting Olivia felt like betraying her, and he wasn't that kind of man. Trust was his default, his anchor. As the departure date neared, Olivia's excitement grew. She spent hours browsing resorts, booking activities, talking about the trip with an energy that felt almost contagious. David listened, nodding along, letting her enthusiasm carry him. "This is going to be perfect," she said one evening, her voice bright as she scrolled through photos of pristine beaches and turquoise waters. He smiled, wanting to believe her. Maybe this was what they needed, a reset, a chance to find each other again. The night before they left, David packed his suitcase, his mind already on the quiet moments he hoped they'd share. He imagined walks by the ocean, conversations without the weight of daily life. He looked at Olivia, who was folding clothes with precision, her movements efficient, almost mechanical. "You're sure you've got everything?" he asked, half joking. She glanced at him, her lips curving into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Always prepared," she said lightly, turning back to her task. He didn't press her. He didn't ask why she seemed distracted, why her laughter felt sharper than usual. Instead, he focused on the promise of the trip, on the hope that it would bring them closer. He was tired of the distance, tired of feeling like a stranger in his own marriage. This vacation, he told himself, would be their turning point. But as he lay in bed that night, a quiet unease settled in his chest. It wasn't anything he could name, just a feeling like the shadow of a storm on the horizon. He dismissed it, closing his eyes, willing himself to trust Olivia one more time. She was his wife, the woman he'd built a life with. Whatever doubts he had, they'd fade once they were away, together, just the two of them. He couldn't have been more wrong. The resort was a world of excess, the kind that made you forget the ordinary. David stepped into the lobby, the air cool and scented with salt, the sound of waves a constant hum beyond the glass walls. Olivia's hand was in his, her grip light, but firm. "Isn't this perfect?" she said, her voice bright, her eyes scanning the space like she owned it. David nodded, feeling the weight of his doubts lift. Maybe this was the fresh start they needed. Then she stopped abruptly. "David, look who's here." Her voice cut through the hum of the lobby, sharp with excitement. 3 women, Clara, Fiona, and Melissa, strode toward them, their laughter loud, their presence overwhelming. David froze, his stomach twisting. "Liv, you made it," Clara called, pulling Olivia into a hug. Fiona and Melissa followed, their voices overlapping in a chorus of greetings. David stood there, an outsider in what was supposed to be their escape. "This wasn't the plan," he said quietly, turning to Olivia. Her smile didn't waver. "Oh, David, it's fine. It'll be fun, all of us together." Her tone was casual, but her eyes darted away, avoiding his. The women swept Olivia toward the bar, leaving David to trail behind, his mind racing. This wasn't a couple's getaway. This was something else, something he hadn't been told. At the restaurant, the women dominated the table, their voices drowning out the soft music. David tried to join the conversation, but his words were brushed aside. "Olivia's the star, isn't she?" Fiona said, her smile sly. "David, you're lucky she keeps everything running." The others laughed, and Olivia leaned into it, raising her glass. "Someone has to hold it all together," she said, her gaze flicking to David, not with warmth but with something colder, like triumph. He forced a smile, his jaw tight. The words stung, but it was the way she didn't correct them that hurt more. She let them paint him as the quiet husband, the one who just paid the bills. He sipped his drink, watching her laugh, her ease with these women who barely acknowledged him. A knot formed in his chest, the unease from the past weeks sharpening into something he couldn't ignore. When the bill arrived, Olivia glanced at it and pushed it toward him without a word. David paid, but a question gnawed at him. At the front desk, he asked to see the booking details. The receptionist hesitated, then confirmed. For rooms, all charged to his card. His name, his money, no discussion. The truth hit like a punch. Olivia hadn't just invited her friends. She'd planned this behind his back, using him to fund her show. He stepped outside, the night air cool against his skin. Olivia's laughter echoed from the bar, carefree and cutting. He stood there, staring at the ocean, the waves indifferent to his unraveling world. She hadn't just lied. She'd orchestrated this, turning their marriage into a prop for her ego. The betrayal wasn't just about the money. It was the mockery, the way she'd let her friends diminish him, the way she'd looked at him like he was nothing. David's hands clenched into fists, then relaxed. He wasn't the type to make a scene, but the clarity was brutal. He'd trusted her, loved her, built a life for her, and she'd turned it into a game. He walked back to the lobby, his steps steady, his mind made up. He wouldn't confront her now, not in front of her audience. But this wasn't over. He'd been played, but he wasn't broken. Not yet. David sat alone in his room, the darkness outside pressing against the window. The ocean's rhythm, once soothing, now felt relentless, mocking his turmoil. The events of the evening replayed in his mind. Olivia's laughter, her friends' dismissive jabs, the cold truth of the 4 rooms charged to his card. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, trying to anchor himself. How had it come to this? How had the woman he loved, the mother of his children, turned him into a stranger in his own life? He closed his eyes, memories flooding in. Their wedding, where Olivia's smile had lit up the room. The sleepless nights with newborn Lily, when they'd taken turns rocking her. The quiet promises they'd made to face the world together. Where had it gone wrong? Had he been too trusting, too focused on providing, too blind to see her drift away? Or had she always been this way, her warmth a mask for something colder? The questions tore at him, each one a fresh wound. Sleep wouldn't come. He left the room, drawn to the resort's bar, hoping to drown the noise in his head. The place was nearly empty, the late hour thinning the crowd. Behind the counter, a man in his 50s polished a glass, his eyes kind but sharp. "Rough night?" he asked, his voice low, no judgment in it. David exhaled, settling onto a stool. "Rough life." The words slipped out, raw and honest. The barman, Roman, nodded like he'd heard it before. "Want to talk about it?" David hesitated, then let it spill. The vacation that wasn't Olivia's friends, the betrayal of the bookings. Roman listened, his hand steady as he poured a glass of water. When David finished, Roman leaned back. "Sounds familiar. My wife left me years ago for someone with a bigger wallet. Thought I'd never recover. But you know what? You're stronger than you feel right now." David looked at him, searching for a catch, but Roman's gaze was steady. "How'd you get through it?" David asked. "Kept going for my daughter," Roman said. "Raised her on my own. Learned I didn't need someone else to tell me my worth. You've got kids, right? They're your reason. Don't let her take that from you." The words hit hard, cutting through the fog of David's pain. He thought of Lily and Ethan, their trusting eyes, their laughter. He'd built a life for them, not just for Olivia. Roman was right. He wasn't defined by her betrayal. He was a father, a man who'd fought for his family, and he wouldn't let her strip that away. "Thanks," David said, his voice steadier now. Roman shrugged, a faint smile on his face. "Just passing it on. You'll figure it out." Back in his room, David stood in front of the mirror, staring at his reflection. The man looking back wasn't broken, though the cracks were there. He was tired, angry, hurt, but he was still standing. Olivia had played him, used his trust against him, but she didn't own him. Not anymore. He sat on the edge of the bed, his mind racing but clearer now. Confronting her in the heat of the moment would only feed her narrative, let her twist it into his overreaction. No, he needed to be smarter, to take back control on his terms. He pulled out his phone, opened his banking app, and stared at the accounts linked to Olivia. His finger hovered over the screen, the weight of the decision settling in. This was the first step, not out of spite, but out of necessity. He wasn't her ATM, her prop, her fool. David closed the app, his resolve hardening. Tomorrow, he'd act, cancel the cards, call his lawyer, start unraveling the life she'd hijacked. For now, he lay back, the ocean's hum fading into the background. The pain was still there, sharp and heavy, but it wasn't all he felt. Beneath it, a spark of strength flickered, fueled by Roman's words and his own stubborn will. He wasn't done fighting. Not for himself, not for his kids, not for the life he deserved. David woke to the pale light of dawn, the ocean's murmur a steady pulse outside his window. The pain of Olivia's betrayal lingered, but it was sharper now, focused, like a blade he could wield. Roman's words from the night before echoed in his mind. "Don't let her decide who you are." He wouldn't. Not anymore. He sat up, his decision made. Today, he'd take back his life. He opened his banking app and methodically canceled every card linked to Olivia. Each tap on the screen felt like a step toward freedom, severing the financial leash she'd assumed was hers to pull. Next, he called Rebecca, his lawyer, her voice crisp and professional despite the early hour. "I want to start divorce proceedings," he said, his tone even. Today, Rebecca didn't hesitate. "I'll have the first draft by tomorrow. Anything specific you want included?" David paused, thinking of Lily and Ethan. "The house stays with me. Fair custody for the kids. They don't deserve to be caught in this." She agreed, promising to handle it swiftly. By mid-morning, David was in the resort's restaurant, a coffee in hand, watching the other guests move through their carefree routines. The normalcy of it felt surreal, a stark contrast to the storm inside him. He was scanning his emails when Olivia stormed in, her presence cutting through the room like a gust of cold air. Her eyes locked onto him, blazing with fury. "What the hell are you doing, David?" she demanded, her voice low but sharp enough to turn heads at nearby tables. He set his cup down, meeting her gaze. "What do you mean?" His calm was deliberate, a shield against her anger. "The cards," she hissed, leaning closer. "They're all declined. The resort staff are hounding me, saying the bills aren't paid. You're humiliating me in front of everyone." Her words were laced with accusation, but there was something else in her tone, panic barely concealed. David leaned back, his expression unreadable. "Humiliating you? Olivia, you invited your friends on a trip I paid for. You laughed at me behind my back, let them mock me while you played the queen. You used me. That's humiliation." Her face flushed, but she didn't back down. "You're blowing this out of proportion," she said, her voice softening, shifting to the coaxing tone she used when she wanted to smooth things over. "It was just a misunderstanding. I thought you'd be fine with it. We can fix this, David. Let's not make a scene." He shook his head, cutting her off. "No more fixing, Olivia. I'm not your bank account. I'm not your prop. I'm done." The words came out steady, each one a release of the anger he'd held back for years. Her eyes narrowed, the softness gone. "You're being petty," she snapped. "You can't just cut me off like this. We're married. We have a life together." David corrected, his voice firm. "I've already called my lawyer. You'll hear from her soon." Olivia's composure cracked, her lips parting in shock. For a moment, she looked like she might argue, but the weight of his words seemed to hit her. "You're serious," she said, almost to herself. "Dead serious," he replied, standing up. "Enjoy your trip. You're on your own now." He walked past her, ignoring the stares from other guests, his heart pounding, but his steps sure. For the first time in years, he felt in control, not of her, but of himself. Back in his room, David packed his bag. Staying here, surrounded by Olivia's world, was pointless. He needed to be home, with Lily and Ethan, rebuilding what mattered. At the front desk, He settled his own bill and canceled any further charges to his card. The receptionist, sensing the tension, processed it quickly. "Leaving so soon, Mr. Bennett?" she asked, her tone polite but curious. "Yes," he said, handing over his key. "I've got somewhere better to be." As he waited for a cab, his phone buzzed, notifications from the bank. Olivia had tried to use the cards again. Spa treatments, room service, a boutique. All declined. A faint smile tugged at his lips, not out of malice, but satisfaction. She was learning, the hard way, that her game was over. The drive to the airport was quiet, the coastal road stretching out under a cloudless sky. David's mind was clear, his resolve unshaken. Olivia's betrayal had shattered the illusion of their marriage, but it hadn't broken him. He thought of Roman's advice, of Lily and Ethan's faces when he'd see them next. They were his purpose, his strength. By the time he boarded the plane, David felt lighter. The pain was still there, a dull ache beneath his ribs, but it was no longer a cage. He was free, not just from Olivia, but from the version of himself that had let her define him. As the plane ascended, he looked out at the shrinking coastline, the resort a distant speck. That chapter was closed. Whatever came next, he'd face it on his terms. David pulled into the driveway, the familiar sight of his house grounding him after the chaos of the resort. Inside, Lily and Ethan were waiting, their laughter spilling from the living room where they played with his parents. He hugged them tightly, their warmth a reminder of what truly mattered. "Dad, you're back early," Ethan said, his eyes bright. David smiled, ruffling his hair. "Couldn't stay away from you, too." That evening, he sat them down, his heart heavy but steady. "There's something we need to talk about," he began, his voice soft but firm. "Your mom and I, we're not going to live together anymore." Lily's face fell, her eyes searching his. "Why, Dad?" she asked, her voice small. David took her hand, meeting her gaze. "Sometimes people grow apart. It's not your fault, and it doesn't change how much we love you. I'll always be here, and your mom will too." Ethan frowned but nodded, leaning into David's side. It wasn't easy, but it was honest, and that was enough for now. Back at the resort, Olivia's world unraveled. The declined cards sparked whispers among her friends. Clara and Fiona, once her loyal audience, turned cold when the bills piled up. "You said you had this covered," Clara snapped, her patience gone. "Is it all David's money?" Fiona added, her tone sharp. Olivia's defenses crumbled. She called her brother, Jacob, begging for a loan to settle the resort's demands. He wired the money, but didn't spare her the truth. "You brought this on yourself, Liv," he said, exasperated. By the time she returned home, her social circle had evaporated, her status reduced to gossip. David, meanwhile, focused on rebuilding. He froze their joint accounts, ensuring Olivia couldn't touch them. He met with Rebecca, his lawyer, to finalize the divorce terms. "Keep it fair for the kids," he told her. "They need stability." Rebecca nodded, her efficiency a quiet comfort. "You're doing the right thing, David." Days later, Olivia called, her voice softer than he'd ever heard. "Can we meet?" she asked. Against his better judgment, he agreed, choosing a quiet cafe near the park. She arrived, looking worn, her usual confidence replaced by something raw. "I'm messed up, David," she said, her hands clasped tightly. "I took you for granted, used you, and I'm sorry. I didn't realize how much I needed you until it was gone." Her eyes glistened, but David stayed guarded. "I hear you," he said, his tone measured, "but sorry doesn't undo what happened. I trusted you, Olivia, and you made me feel like nothing. I can't go back." She nodded, tears spilling over. "I know. I just needed to say it." They parted in silence, a chapter closed not with anger, but with clarity. David felt no bitterness, only relief. He'd given her everything, and she'd chosen to throw it away. That was on her. Life without Olivia was simpler, quieter. David threw himself into being a father, taking Lily and Ethan to school, helping with homework, planning weekend hikes. One evening, as they built a model rocket together, Ethan looked up. "You seem happier, Dad." The words caught David off guard, but he smiled. "I am, buddy. Because of you, too." He reconnected with old friends, people Olivia had once dismissed. One of them, Emily, a kind woman with a sharp wit, became a steady presence. She didn't demand or dazzle. She listened, laughed, and saw him for who he was. Their friendship grew naturally, a flicker of something new in a life he was reclaiming. Olivia, meanwhile, struggled. She took a job at a local boutique, a humbling shift from her high society days. Jacob called David one night, venting. She's trying, but she's still blaming everyone else. David sighed. That's her choice. I'm done carrying her. Slowly, Olivia began to change, reaching out to Lily and Ethan more, showing up for their school events. David allowed it, knowing the kids needed their mother, even if he no longer needed her. Months later, David stood in his backyard with Lily and Ethan, a young oak sapling in hand. This is our tree, he said, handing them the shovel. It'll grow with us. They dug together, the earth cool and forgiving under their hands. As they packed the soil around the roots, David felt the weight of the past lift. The betrayal, the pain, the years of being invisible. It was all behind him. He wasn't the man he'd been, the one who'd let trust blind him. He was stronger, grounded, whole. Lily laughed as Ethan smeared dirt on her arm, and David joined in, their voices filling the evening air. This was his life now, real, messy, and his. The future wasn't perfect, but it was bright, rooted in the love he had for his children and the strength he'd found within himself. Olivia's choices had burned their past to ash, but from it, David had built something new, something unbreakable.